General Manuel Oscar Rodriguez, Ibons known to most as Mori, walked slowly across the tarmac, his eyes cold as he inspected the brigade of Marines and support units. Something had happened. The brigade was preparing for deployment to the front lines, where Earth planned to secure a border with another species. The conflict had started over to lifeless worlds. Their only value was location. They were perfect for ship resupply, refueling, and repair far from major trade routes. Earth had been planning this move for 6 years, gathering intelligence on enemy forces. The reports were worrying enough to make even veterans like Mori hesitate. This brigade was assigned to one of those worlds, moving in behind a large wave of combat troops. It included 1 construction battalion, 3 combat battalions, and a support battalion that would eventually stay behind to run the base once the border was secured. Mori stopped in front of each combat unit, glaring at the soldiers before moving on. Trouble from combat troops was common, something he had seen in nearly 40 years of service, but this time, the issue hadn't come from them. Probably not. When he reached the support unit, he noticed it was arranged differently than usual. The administration and information platoon stood at the front, most of them Krenetchi species humans jokingly called space otters. At first, there were worries the nickname might offend them, but the Krenet had embraced it, happy to be given a name that others could pronounce. Humans, in turn, had grown fond of them. That bond had partly led to the problem. 2 days earlier, there had been a drunken brawl at a local bar. Locals had refused to serve the otters and harassed them, sparking a fight. Several Krenet were injured, one badly. Mori knew the otters weren't the violent type. If anything, they were about as likely to start a fight as they were to sprout wings and fly. The real culprits were elsewhere. Mori stopped in front of the construction battalion. He was sure the guilty soldiers were here. Raising his voice so the whole unit could hear, he barked. 2 days ago, members of this brigade destroyed a cantina. I know there was an unprovoked attack against our people, and we are working with local authorities to punish those responsible. But that does not excuse what followed. Using Earth Force vehicles to demolish a civilian business is unacceptable. Now who was driving the bulldozer that leveled the building? I know it was one of you. Until I find out who, I will hold every soldier in this unit responsible. Turn yourself in or turn in the guilty man. This has become a diplomatic crisis, and it will be dealt with immediately. The construction soldiers glanced at each other from the corners of their eyes. Then, as one, every enlisted man from the heavy vehicle company stepped forward and raised his hand. Mori's glare hardened. He knew exactly what this was: mutiny disguised as defiance, and over 200 men were standing against him. The soldiers had stepped forward to protect the real culprit. Mori spotted the commander of the heavy vehicle company, a young lieutenant staring at his men in horror. The soldiers wouldn't give up their guilty comrade, but Mori figured the lieutenant might crack under pressure. He marched up to the officer until their boots were almost touching. The young man looked ready to faint, though taller than Mori by several centimeters. He was thin, awkward, and cursed with a baby face. Enlisted troops mocked him constantly with cruel jokes. Does his mom know he's in Earth Force? Did she sign his permission slip? Maybe he's earning scout badges. Hey kid, want my ID so you can buy a beer? His name, Lieutenant Siapolsky, had been chopped down to Skippy. Complaining would only make things worse, so he endured it, but his authority was already hanging by a thread. These are your men, Mori barked. Your responsibility. You should know who did this. Skippy trembled, humiliated. Being dressed down in public was bad enough, but facing Mori, a man with a reputation as the toughest Marine alive, was terrifying. Mori wasn't promoted by politics, but by battlefield grit, field commissions, and victories in impossible fights. He was even a legend for beating a court-martial on live broadcast. So tell me, Mori pressed, his voice like steel, which one of them is guilty? Skippy's voice shook. None of them, sir. Mori narrowed his eyes. None of them. Maybe it was you who gave the order. How do I know you didn't command them to do it? Skippy swallowed hard, then whispered, because I did it. Mori froze. Repeat that. He roared, leaning so close his shout nearly burst the young man's eardrum. Skippy flinched but then snapped to attention, shouting, I drove the vehicle. I destroyed the building, sir. His lip trembled as he bit it to keep from crying. His whole body shook. A murmur rippled through the company. Then, shockingly, soldiers from other construction companies began raising their hands too, stepping forward one by one. Soon, almost every enlisted man and even some officers were claiming guilt. The situation was spiraling out of control. Desperate, Mori turned toward the space otters. They were peace-loving compared to the roughneck humans. Maybe he could get through to them. This has to be settled now, Mori said firmly. We leave in 12 days. If any of you know what happened, you can help reduce the diplomatic mess this caused. Command already knows none of you are guilty. We just need the truth. The otters exchanged nervous looks, chattering softly among themselves. Finally, one raised his paw and stepped forward. You see, Mori said. You know something. The otter nodded shyly. I operated the vehicle, General. Mori stared in disbelief. Impossible. Your feet can't even reach the pedals. Another otter raised his paw. I worked the pedals for him, General. Then more otters stepped forward, one claiming to handle the gear shift, another saying he pressed the buttons. Soon, nearly all of them were confessing, each inventing a part in the incident. Mori could hardly believe it. The entire brigade, humans and otters alike, was now united in protecting someone. But who? Some of the otters even claimed they had fueled and cleaned the vehicle so it could be used to destroy the bar. As their ridiculous confessions piled up, Marines from other battalions began stepping forward as well. Mori groaned under his breath. Dios mio, he motioned for the otters to settle down, then turned back to the entire company. EarthGov didn't want you assigned to a frontline brigade. They thought there wasn't a place for you in combat. But I fought for your people. I knew if nothing else you were smarter than these cabrones. He jabbed a finger toward the human ranks. But clearly we've rubbed off on you because you're just as stupid as we are. The otters bobbed their heads proudly, as if it were a compliment. Mori moved back to the center of the formation and barked new orders. This brigade is now under lockdown. Combat units start deployment prep immediately. Support staff get logistics ready for inspection and complete inventories. Construction battalion, you'll work 12-hour shifts until the cantina is rebuilt. Every wall, every table, even the furniture. If a Marine doesn't have a useful task, they'll join the construction crew. Comparindan, hurrah! The Marines roared back. The otters, startled for a moment, then shouted their own version. Hurrah, Mori sighed. Maybe, just maybe, this disaster could be salvaged. Brigade, dismissed. As the troops broke formation, bits of chatter floated through the air. Congrats, Lieutenant Ski. Guess your balls finally dropped. Well, otters, looks like you're as dumb as us. Now welcome to the club. Hey, the general ordered us to rebuild the bar, but he never said how we had to rebuild it. Oh, I've got some ideas. 12 days later, the brigade shipped out on scheduled mission ready, and with the bar completely rebuilt, the owner and local officials were furious. Half the furniture, bathrooms, and fixtures had been redesigned for otter-sized patrons. The brigade's logo covered nearly every surface, etched into tables, painted on walls, engraved in windows, stamped onto podiums and doors. Outside, the old sign advertising food and drink had been replaced by a glowing animated display, a cartoon otter driving a bulldozer. When the locals filed an official complaint, Mori shut them down hard. We helped you, he growled. You said you couldn't serve Earth Force because your facilities weren't fit. Problem solved. Now you'll serve everyone, human or otter, and you'll never again have trouble with locals. Because they've learned an attack on one of us is an attack on all. Don't make me come back here light years away. A human was laughing so hard he could barely breathe. Stumbling down the ship's corridor, he pounded on a door, breaking every etiquette rule. Per opened it in alarm. What happened? Is there an emergency? The human clutched his ribs, gasping and wheezing with laughter. Per panicked. Lie down. You're in distress. I'll call a medic at once. Are you hurt? Did you breathe in something toxic? Per asked, alarmed. Rusty sat on the floor of Per's quarters, gasping for air between fits of laughter. He was trying to explain the funniest thing he'd ever heard. Rusty, once a terror Marine himself, still had plenty of friends in service who fed him news and gossip. This story was about his old commanding officer, a man who, instead of slowing down with age, only seemed to get more dangerous. Most generals, once promoted, settled into comfortable offices, rubbing elbows with politicians and contractors. Not him. He stayed on the front lines leading real units. His enemies, especially the political kind, had tried to ruin him before, even setting up a sham court-martial. But he'd walked away untouched, turning the trial into another step in his rise to legend. And now, he'd outdone himself. Otters, nicknamed Space Otters by humans, had been folded into Terra Marine units as amphibious specialists and underwater demolition experts. A group of them had been ambushed by alien terrorists, captured and stashed in a local restaurant where the owner agreed to hold them hostage. The commanding officer's response? Order a raid. The commandos stormed the place, rescued every otter, and then, because subtlety was never his style, leveled the restaurant completely. But he didn't stop there. He ordered it rebuilt as a brand new Earth Force command center, designed to house both humans and otters. It would also serve as the future training site for military construction and engineering. The best part, the logo was already decided, an otter driving a bulldozer.